2012 Longmont City Council meeting to order. This is a study session. It's an open forum session. Could we please start with the roll call?
Mayor Coombs.
Present.
Councilmember Begley.
Here.
Finley. Here. Levison.
Sarah Levison here with Mr. Bagley.
Thank you.
Samori. Santos. Witt.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight's meeting is an open forum which has no formal agenda other than to listen to the voices from the community. If you'd like to speak to the council this evening, please place your name on the sign-up sheet outside the city council chambers. I have one sign-up sheet in front of me, and the clerk will bring me additional sheets as the night progresses. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. The timer lights will turn yellow when you have about 1 minute left and will turn red when your 5 minutes is up. Council members may have follow-up questions or comments depending on the topic. The only rule we have tonight is very simple. Please be courteous and respectful of others with your words and actions, and the council promises to do the same. Let us get started. The first person on the list is Mike Schnauzmeiser, followed by Chris Rodriguez.
I'd like to thank the council for giving me the opportunity to address you here this evening. I actually have a little bit of a presentation, if Don, you'd bring me up here. I'm here tonight to talk about the St. Vrain River corridor through Longmont, and specifically to ask this question: what is the city's vision for the St. Vrain River corridor? A little background: the historic flood event, a 100-year flood event, before the city was developed, would have flown through this area 200 years ago in a width of about maybe 100 or 200 feet wide. But today, the floodplain is largely a man-made situation. This is the result of two small bridges being built too small that tend to block up the river, and then roads that were raised approaching the bridges that tend to act as levees and dams that dam up these blocked up waters. What we've effectively created is a man-made lake. This is largely a man-made condition, and this is an important takeaway here tonight. This is not the historic natural floodplain that would have occurred before the city was developed. The question that you might want to ask is, why am I here talking about this tonight? The answer to that is that it's about three primary things. One is life safety. Another is the environmental protection. Another is economic risk. There's a great economic risk from the current floodplain situation. And finally, there's economic opportunity that I believe is being squandered by the current status of affairs. This man-made river corridor and floodplain, currently this is a picture of what's in it right now, and this is what would be washed into the watershed. This is an environmental disaster. This is what also is in the floodplain and be washed into the river corridor during a flood event. This is a picture, you can't see it real well, but this is of a mobile home park that is in the floodplain. And this mobile home park that has well over 100 population of 100 people, it takes about 18 inches of water to turn a car into a boat, to make a car buoyant. And that car basically becomes uncontrollable, is washed into the watershed. Imagine you've got a 100-year flood event taking place after 3 days of storm. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. It's black. It's thundering. You know, it's raining cats and dogs. The power is out because all the transformers have been short-circuited. You have no communications with people. And even with the best of disaster preparedness, you have hundreds of people fleeing an area that's already 2 feet underwater when cars turn into boats at 18 inches. This is a potential death trap, and it needs to be addressed. This is a primary consideration of the city of Longmont. Such an event occurred in Fort Collins in 1997. Despite the best of disaster preparedness, 5 people lost their lives. There was $200 million in economic damage to the city of Fort Collins. Our future is a choice. We can choose the future on the left. We can continue with the status quo and put the environment and life safety at risk, or we can turn this liability into an opportunity. The opportunity, as other cities have done, for economic prosperity. As the city of Pueblo did, they changed a commercial industrial area along the river corridor into an economic engine for the city. They now have 450,000 visitors visiting Pueblo every year specifically for the river corridor. They've amassed hundreds of millions of dollars in economic development from this. Beautiful places where they engage the city instead of divide the city. If we look at the comprehensive map behind you, the city is divided by the river physically and in many, allegorically in many ways. Are we wasting economic opportunity? Are codes user-friendly? I propose they're not. This is Harvest Junction. This is what is coming out of our current system for economic development along the river corridor. Many different opportunities. A river corridor overlay district is a pathway to a solution that many cities have used that has river fronting development codes rather than street fronting development codes, and can lead instead of this to this kind of development along our river corridor and create a great fabric for the community. I ask that this issue not continue to be kicked down the road as it has been for years. It's a work plan item right now. I would like to see it come back to the city council at the council retreat and discussed with consultants with experience in this that can really demonstrate the possibilities. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mike. Go ahead.
Mr. Schnottmeyer, please come back. This is like our one time all year that we can actually like do a little back and forth, so I'd like to take the opportunity. And first of all, I want to compliment you on your persistence. Is this, what, the 3rd or 4th year you've been coming to talk to us? Maybe, is it the 5th year?
It's the 5th year.
Okay.
Yes.
And you and I recently walked on a nice, brisk December day, the river area. And besides your input, what other kind of activity, how can we loop this into the TOD? I know that next week we're going to have a concept brainstorming. I hope you come to that meeting on January 25th.
Yes.
And then what other parts of this, and who else have you talked to that can help us with this, maybe without having the cost of a consultant?
Well, I have talked to a couple of groups. There's a nonprofit called the Greenwave Foundation, based out of Denver. Jeff Shoemaker, his father ran for mayor and was in the state legislature for several years. And they have offered to come up and present to council at no charge, a little hour presentation to share their experience. In the city of Denver, they've helped raise over $100 million that's been directed towards river corridor development along the Platte River Valley and Cherry Creek. And out of that, they're estimating about $10 billion in economic development as we see when we go to lower downtown Denver. Just today, I spoke with a group called Design Studios West, Don Brandis, who I realized was responsible for much of the design work for the Pueblo River Corridor, for the Glendale project. Glendale, in this economy, is doing a $200 million plus river corridor development. Pueblo just announced that they're doing the second phase of their river corridor development with an E-district along the river, $120 million project in this economy. City of Estes Park. Don Brandis has been working with them from Design Studios West for 20 years. and they've invested over $15–20 million in their river corridor, gotten a return on investment of about $70–80 million return on investment. These are good investments, and they have a stronger community, a healthier community. And Design Studios West also offered to come up and present at no charge, just to share what could happen. They are experts at I think what needs to happen is community engagement. There needs to be just at last year's retreat, the council directed staff to do a community outreach program to assess the level of community support and interest for, and just to see what people would like to have happen. It's not up for me or anybody to master plan or decide what should happen along the river. It's really up to the citizens of Longmont to explore the opportunities, but in a context of being informed as to possibilities from somebody that connect the dots. And I think people would choose jobs and economic development over this economic risk that we're running. It's a huge liability, life safety risk, economic risk.
And then, do you know whether or not we've had 2 classes from the University of Denver, University of Colorado, Denver, the design classes, kind of using this as a workshop for their master's degree program. Do you know if they're looking at doing something again in their class this spring?
I think Gordon might be able to address that. I don't believe so.
No, okay. All right.
I was a little disappointed not to see them given an opportunity to present. For those that don't know, the University of Colorado Graduate School of Planning and Architecture, over the course of 3 semesters, worked with city planning staff, and I estimate they put in about 5 man-years of work between the number of students over that time period in creating some design concepts along the river corridor. And that's a huge body of work that we can tap into, and we can engage the public in dialogue about some of those concepts.
Thank you for keeping persistent, because I think it takes not just us back here, but I know Councilmember Witt was excited by the idea. I'm excited by the idea. Trying to loop it all together is, and trying to get everything coordinated. There is going to be some recreational kayak course planned for further down, but the concentration of the area you're talking about is really, I think, a great future opportunity. So thank you for being persistent, and this is some new information you've given us tonight.
And if I might quickly, in complete answer to your question, you asked about other areas of engagement with this. The river corridor relates to the sugar mill project. It relates to the First and Main Street project. It even relates to the Butterball project, because that is just north of the proposed Dickens Park, which is just north of the river. It relates to Twin Peaks, which is connected to the river through the Boulder County Fairgrounds and Rogers Grove. It relates to Golden Ponds. It relates to health and wellness and branding, tourism, so many issues that I hear talked about every day in the city dialogue. And all of these are linked by the river corridor if we can have a clear vision for the river corridor and how it can help all these projects succeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Anything else?
Yeah, Councilmember Finley.
Hi, Mike. It was great to meet with you a couple weeks ago, and I share your vision for the river corridor as well. Is it possible, Gordon, to have the Greenway Foundation and Design Studios come and present to us, either at the retreat or at work or study session?
Mayor, yes. I guess that a couple things I would say to put this in context. It is one of your work plan items. It was one that, as Mike indicated, citizen engagement was expected to, we were hoping to do it last fall, the last quarter of last year. It was moved to the first quarter of this year at about the same time as we got a rather important project of 120 days to redo the oil and gas regulations. And so I will say that in order to adequately handle the limited amount of staff and the unlimited amount of projects we're trying to do, it probably is going to be pushed off until after that 120-day effort, or at least going to be slowed down. But I think At the appropriate time, bringing those foundations here as part of staff presentation and update is definitely appropriate.
If I could add to that the Greenway Foundation in Denver has been successful, again, in raising over $100 million and working hand in hand with the city for river, and that includes planning and consulting efforts. They are experts at raising funds in a federal, state, private funds from local private organizations. I'm talking to them about potentially forming a 501c3 nonprofit that we could potentially raise funds from the community for this effort. So I really think I understand and empathize with the staff being so stressed with their workload. I would suggest that if we can engage in a private fundraising effort that can help pay for consultants to come in and help facilitate this effort, it would take some of the load off the city staff and would actually bring in a level of expertise that goes back for decades, like with Design Studios West working with the city of Estes Park. They're real clear about what works and what doesn't work with engaging the community, and made me clear that it's a very sensitive issue in doing it correctly.
Thank you. Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. This is a question for Gordon Pedro, our city manager. When we hear his proposal, his suggestion, we were talking about Union Reservoir a little while ago and about the funds being dedicated only for water projects. If we didn't want to do something out at Union Reservoir, could we use those same funds for something like this?
The simple answer probably is no. Just because the water runs down the river doesn't mean that it's in the right pot to be used for some of those other projects. But I wouldn't want to just completely discount that there are other funds that could be utilized. But no, just because it's water doesn't mean that we have the right pot of money full.
We can look at the pots.
But we can always look at
We can look at the pots. And then the other question was that a motion from you, Councilmember Finley? To ask the staff to bring us a... Yeah. I was just curious. It was your idea. It was beautiful. I love that idea.
If I could add to that, GOCO funds, which the City of Longmont currently has available, were used by the City of Glendale and many other cities for planning efforts along the river corridor for this sort of economic tourism, recreational development. And that's an allowable and very frequently used context for using GOCO funds.
Mayor, if I could just say one other thing. You know, on the 4th, when you have your retreat to do team building and an update of your work plan, I think you'll get a context there that might help put all of this in a little better focused vision. So at that point, I think that there very likely could be direction that you'll want to give us. But I do believe you need a little more of a context.
Thank you, Gordon. Okay, I guess we'll have the next speaker.
Thank you very much.
Chris Rodriguez.
Mayor Coombs and members of council, Chris Rodriguez, 1265 Button Rock Drive. First, I want to once again congratulate and welcome the new members of City Council and those returning. I also like to say happy trails and good luck to City Manager Gordon Pedro. Enjoy your retirement. That's all I'm going to say now. I figured tonight's open forum was an appropriate time to talk about what we are doing here tonight, which is an expanded version of public invited to be heard. Once again, it's far from the first time there have been suggestions to limit public invited. In the past, under Mayors Pernak and Lang, the public's time at the podium was shortened from 5 minutes to 3 minutes. I oppose that. There was even some formula where the first 12 speakers got 5 minutes, but everyone else, up to a point, only got 3. I oppose that. Then limitations were instituted that had to do with the sign-up sheet. If you didn't sign up, you didn't speak. I oppose that. Then the second public invited to be heard at study sessions was done away with altogether. I also oppose that. In fairness, Mayor Brian Baum allowed people to speak who did not sign up on the list and usually had a second call at study sessions. My objections to these limitations are all fairly public, both here, in the paper, and online, so it should come as no surprise where I come down on the latest flare-up about public invite be heard. I'm not in favor of limiting it. That's not to say there are not some valid arguments on both sides of this issue. There are. But the importance of citizens being heard by their representatives trumps most of the arguments, in my opinion anyway. From the City Council's point of view, I agree. These meetings often become 5+ hour marathons when it begins with 1+ hours of often repetitive public speakers. But this was no secret to any of you applying for this position. I recall asking some candidates if they were aware of what the position entails and if they were able to fulfill those responsibilities. As they say, it is what it is, and this is what it is. The other argument is the problem of presenters having to wait a long time to get their agenda item discussed. This indeed is a problem, and I've seen people wait hours only to have their agenda item delayed until a future council meeting. Not all of that is the public's fault, as council members themselves are often guilty of repeating themselves or going on for too long, too often. The infamous paralysis by analysis. I don't have a good resolution to this particular problem except forewarn anyone you invite to council that we have a very active and vocal populace. But the public, or at least parts of it, have some culpability for this recurring problem of limiting public access at council meetings. Why does this issue keep coming up? The past examples of limitations were directly attributed to citizens, usually on one issue, repeating themselves and marching one person after another to the podium, essentially making the same point over and over. In the past, it's been Walmart, LifeBridge, Union Reservoir, Heavenfest, the airport, and recently fracking. This issue of limiting public invited also keeps coming up because people often need to be reminded that while free speech is a right, it has limitations, and it's not something to be exploited or abused. So I offer these observations and suggestions to public speakers. Not everyone will agree with what you have to say. That should be obvious, but lately I've seen some people get upset that city council members may not value their opinion. Get over it. No one, elected or not, must accept, watch, or consider whatever piece of information you give them. To try to make it seem like, to you it may seem like common sense that any logical person should accept as fact and that it's information people need to see. To others, it may seem like propaganda. Having people repeat themselves over and over, regardless of the number of people, doesn't make their issue more true or right. It just means a lot of people got organized. If consensus was based on this, we'd have what is called mob rule. There are many outlets to be heard and to communicate with elected officials. They include phone calls, emails, coffee with council, the newspaper, including open forum letters, the TC line and online comment section, blogging, the radio, shameless plug, Monday night, 6 o'clock, KRCN AM 1060, where we talk about nothing but Longmont. Discussions with advisory boards and committees, and of course, public invited to be heard at this podium. It seems lately attacks on staff and council are on the rise, not a good tactic to win people over. The city's rules on this aren't draconian or over-restrictive. They are just trying to maintain some decency and decorum. If you feel the need to make a personal attack, the previous mentioned venues are better suited than at this podium. There are times and places for that kind of activity. I know. I've had my moments, but not here. I don't think that's too much to ask, but lately people are nudging right up against that line, and they know better. Well, you can talk about green cheese and the moon all you like, or political situations that have nothing to do with Longmont. This podium is not your personal soapbox, and council and the public would be better served discussing Longmont issues at Longmont City Council meetings. That's not unreasonable limitation or request. It's common courtesy. Most of these suggestions are common sense, and both council and the public should meet somewhere in the middle for a reasonable resolution to this issue. If not, more rules could be on the way, and if past is any indication, they only get more restrictive on the public.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions? Councilmember Witt.
Uh-oh.
Who do you think you are, coming up here and telling us this? No. At what point do you think that, and I think I go either way. I understand. I really value the comments that people make because I do hear stuff I wouldn't hear otherwise. But at what point do you think it's filibustering, or do you think that we've gotten to that point here in Longmont?
Not always. There was a situation having to do, I believe, with Heavenfest, where the people were organized ahead of time. You could tell because they talked about different aspects of the issue. They didn't say the same thing over and over. They hit different points, which is fine. But that's not usually the case. The situation I brought up about when they cut back from 5 minutes to 3 minutes was all over Walmart. It went on for like 2 hours here. And right after that, that's when that came out. You know, it's hot and cold. When you have a new council, that's part of the issue. When you have a big issue, like fracking right now, that's part of the issue too. I mean, you're going to have other people speak tonight, and maybe they'll comment on that. I can't really say. You know, it all depends on the council, the tone, the citizens, the issue. I wish I had a better answer, but I'm seeing both sides of this, but I still say the public invited is more important than being home at an early hour. And but I agree more with your position that you made, that it's not fair to the presenters to come down here to get shoved off to another meeting and they have to drive all the way back home and don't get their issue heard at all. So,
Well, thank you, Chris.
thanks.
Kimberly Gibbs, followed by Jim Walsh.
This is different. Good evening, Mayor Coombs and members of the council. My name is Kim Gibbs, and I live at 7468 Mount Sherman Road. I'd like to talk to you tonight about quality of life issues by way of a story, a brief story. For many years now, I have served on the board of directors for Powderhorn Condominiums, which is in Gun Barrel. And in 2008, the issue of smoke infiltration came to our attention. Smoke infiltration is when tobacco smoke comes from someone smoking on the balcony or even inside their unit into adjacent units. And we had several residents who were complaining about that. So the first thing we did was we invited residents to weigh in so we could get both sides, find out really how big of a problem it was, and go from there. And we did find that it was fairly widespread. So next was what to do about it. And we had a 7-member board. And at first there was virtually no consensus at all about how to proceed. On one side, we'll call it the left, we had a couple of members who felt like we should pursue making Powderhorn completely non-smoking, both inside and out. And somewhere in the middle, we had some members who felt like we did need a rule to restrict smoking and protect our residents. And then on the far right, we had a couple members who felt that we had no business whatsoever taking on this issue. We should focus on the financials and just deal with these on a case-by-case basis. Over the next several months, we looked at this issue. We looked at what other condominiums had done. We looked at rules that were passed and which ones had stood a legal challenge, which ones hadn't. We got our own legal opinions. One of our members argued that by taking on this issue, we really were setting up the HOA for a legal battle. And I argued exactly the opposite, that by not taking on this issue, that in this day and age, we really were asking for a legal challenge in that regard. We had a lot of intense discussions, and we were a board that had worked together closely for many years, and I think each of us wanted what was best for the community, but we had very different ideas about how to achieve that and what our role was. I remember leaving those meetings with a headache, with anxiety, feeling like this was a lot to ask of an all-volunteer board. It really felt like herding cats sometimes. But at the end, a year later, in the summer of 2009, we had finally crafted this rule, and it was ready for a vote. And I felt very strongly that just squeaking a vote by with, say, a 4-3 vote was completely unacceptable. We needed unanimous support for this rule. And in fact, the rule came up for a vote, and we did have unanimous agreement and support for this rule. We had done the groundwork to build on common ground, to do our research and do what was needed to get everyone on board with this. The annual meeting came right after that, and this lady stood up and said, "I just want to thank you for taking on this issue. Our lives have been hell." And at that point, I felt like, maybe this was kind of worth it. It's been 2.5 years since then. I think everyone would agree that it was a success. And I think Powderhorn condominiums is a fantastic place to live. It's an even better place to live now as a result of this rule. But the reason I tell this story is because this little rule that we passed affected about 448 households, or maybe 1,000 people. And so I'm thinking about the work that you do, and the rules and the issues that you take on will affect maybe 90,000 people. The work that you do is very important. And you're going to hear this year about issues surrounding clean air, clean water, noise and nuisance issues. And we have high expectations of you. So I just want to remind you that we all know that jobs and the economy are very important. But the quality of life issues go hand in hand, and they're very interconnected. And I just want to reinforce that idea. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. I can personally see what those residents were like, because we have a neighbor that sometimes has a daughter that in the summertime, when everybody's got their windows open, will come out on her balcony and smoke, and it can be kind of an irritant at times. Anyway, next up is Jim Walsh.
Hello, everybody. Mayor, council, people. I live on Union Reservoir, and me and some of my neighbors are here tonight. And the main thing we want is we want to make it clear to mayor and city council members that we want to be involved during the planning stages of the proposed path around Union Reservoir. We are providing a list of those concerns so we can be contacted and consulted on the best options for the citizens of Longmont and the property owners and wildlife surrounding the reservoir.
Thank you, Jim.
I do. Should I give it to you now? I have a list of neighbors. Who wants that?
Okay. Yeah.
Mayor?
Okay. Councilmember Finley.
Jim? You're on the hot seat now.
I guess that's fine.
It's great to see you again.
Good to see you.
Am I to understand that you've not been notified about any of this until recently?
Yeah, that's one of the main reasons I came tonight, is because I live right on the reservoir, and there's probably 15 of my neighbors here tonight, and none of us were notified. And all of a sudden, we hear about this, and it's pretty shocking, because it's going to run between, I live on a lake, and it's going to run between the lake and my house, 10 foot from my back door. That's a little frightening.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Witt.
Gordon, do you know anything specific about if these residents had been contacted, or how did this happen?
Well, I can only say that there were hundreds of notifications going out that went out to anybody that was in the general area, and I would not venture to say whether or not they saw the notification, like all of us. Maybe they got it and tossed it. Maybe it wasn't delivered. I only know that the staff that was involved in doing this process, and off and on for 3 or 4 years that we've been master planning the area around Union Reservoir, that notifications have gone out that there were planning opportunities to have people involved and engaged. But I would not be able to venture a guess as to why any individual family did or did not receive the notifications. They were all done by mail, I'm sure.
Okay, next up, Joe Bassman, followed by, Councilmember Levison.
Thank you. Jim, one question. Do you ever notice when you drive around the city of Longmont, sometimes there are those signs that say public hearing, put in properties that might have a public hearing? Do you think it would be a useful thing if we put a sign up if we had a master planning process? Would you have noticed that and maybe called? Why don't you come down, because we can't do the dialogue unless other people can participate?
If it impacts the property owner so directly, I mean, they got to be notified, don't you think?
Well,
I mean, I'm
yeah,
aware of the
yeah.
master plan of enlarging the reservoir, but the path was, until last week, I'd never really heard about it.
So I'm wondering what other methods would be viable for you. I mean, do you notice that sometimes this, when there's going to be a public hearing on a change of use or something, that there'll be a sign in the yard saying there's going to, public hearing notice, whatever. I mean, if we would have put something up like that at the entrance to Union Reservoir, would you have noticed something like that and thought, well, there's something going to go on around the reservoir to make a phone call?
Yeah, I mean, I like that idea, but I, excuse me, I still think more of an effort should have been made to contact me directly. I don't know how I never got anything in the mail. I don't read the local paper, that's maybe my fault, but still, this is a pretty unique situation in terms of how it's going to impact me and my neighbors.
No.
So.
And I'm not unsympathetic. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out if you don't read the local paper and, you wouldn't know to go check in the city's website to see that there's an item on the first page of the website that might say Union Master Planning Process begins or some big splash. I'm just, and if
well, the city said they notified people, but, I don't know how they choose who they notified. But of all the 15 people in our little group, nobody got notification. And it's common knowledge on one of their maps that had all our names listed as property owners, the ones that are most impacted. So
maybe something happened when they started changing those zip codes out there, that was the 1 week that everything went out. I don't know, but one thing the city does really pride itself on is trying to get everybody involved in the process. So I'm sorry that it didn't work out, but in the future, if you have suggestions, then, please give us some other way of connecting with people if you guys can figure that out, because that's information we need to know.
Well, I would suggest, too, that if you have a situation like this where there's a master plan and, it's not affecting 20,000 people, it's affecting, maybe 100, that you gather those email addresses as well. I mean, a lot of people's snail mail doesn't really apply anymore. But had I been notified via email, then...
How would we get your email address?
Yeah, that's right. I don't know. Call
You said
me.
you would
Call me.
request by snail mail. No, that's what I said. I mean, it would be great if we had, but you provided all that to us now.
Well, maybe I'll put it this way. If you had a master plan for a community that was impacting a lot of property owners, that you would more than once contact them and say, we've got a master plan that's going to result in changes in your neighborhood for the next 20 years or 10 years or 5 years. What's the best way to contact you? Now, I know calling people isn't efficient, but if I had been contacted that way, I would have given an email, and that's the way I live is email. So, and I think a lot of people are the same way. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe Bassman.
Thank you very much, Mary Coombs. Council members of Longmont, thank you. Thanks additionally for the moratorium that's currently in effect for the gas and oil regulations to be drafted. Thanks to Gordon and his staff for working diligently on it. Many thanks to all of you as well for this forum to give us a chance to speak with each other about various topics. First of all, I didn't exactly know what to expect in this type of forum, so I watched the tape from last year's open forum, January 18th, I believe it was, and I was very impressed, in fact, very moved by some of the presenters, as well as with the way that the council members interacted with those people. I would like to mention, though, that on the tape, you couldn't see it, but you could hear the applause from the audience, and it was done very respectfully. It was done at appropriate times, and it added a lot to my visual enjoyment of seeing the film when I could hear the audience reaction. I didn't think that it was inappropriate at all. And then I would like to talk tonight on the topic of the gas and oil well, the gas and oil wells that are possibly coming to our town that have been proposed for drilling by TOP. And in fact, I have to say that I'm somewhat surprised. I'm wondering if I'm all alone in thinking to myself that with the conversations that are going on here tonight, conversations about master planning for Union Reservoir, for a river corridor, for the impact of trailways around Union Reservoir, when I compare that with a statement such as that there's a possibility that there's going to be greater than 120 wells just located on city property in the Sandstone area and on Union Reservoir, I wonder if we're really looking at these various different topics in the appropriate context. Considering all of the planning that's gone on at Union and the fact that these wells have a possibility of being drilled there regardlessly, I'm just making this connection between our river corridor and the dangers inherent in the way that we've dammed up the river and the fact that we don't have a lot of control as a city right now as to where those wells are going to be placed. So anyway, the moratorium is short. It's possibly doable. But nonetheless, it does seem extremely, it seems to me that it's a very short time for us to really understand the impacts and what's going on. And what I'd like to do tonight, if I may, I have 3 questions that I'd like to ask each of you council members. 3 questions I'd like to ask. I'm hoping each of you will find an opportunity to answer to each one. They're short. And the reason I'd like to do this, I recognize that last year it wasn't the way that the open forum was handled. So I'm asking for your permission to do this. But I'm also hoping that answers to these 3 questions will help us to frame our conversations in the coming few weeks as we have an opportunity to review the regulations that are going to be drafted up for gas and oil, and hopefully to interact in a positive fashion so that we're accomplishing what we want to accomplish as a city. So if I may proceed, I will.
Okay, I guess it's going to depend on what the 3 questions are.
Fair enough. All right, well, let me start. I have been speaking to council members individually and collectively regarding the topic of gas and oil. Please understand, whenever I talk about this topic, my intention and I hope my scope has been to talk only about gas and oil facilities within the city of Longmont. I'm not trying to address on a global scale, on a general scale, how these issues should be dealt with. My concern is where I live in my city. I don't think I gave my address. I live at 3414 Lakeview Circle. I'm also the owner of the surface rights at that address. Anyway, if I could start with this one, please. I'm asking, do you believe that drilling and fracking a well in an urban environment is a disruptive process, except perhaps in an area designated for heavy industrial use? And I could see that this question could be answered on a 1 to 5 scale, of 1 being that it would be tolerably disruptive, to 5 being that it would be very disruptive and repetitive over time. And if I could have your opinion on that scale or to that question, it would be very helpful.
Why don't you do all 3 questions, and then if we want, we'll respond to them? Give us
Sure.
Okay. That's question number 1.
So the first is, what do you feel on a scale of 1 to 5 of being disruptive? The second is, what is your opinion about leasing or selling oil and gas mineral rights owned by the city in areas that are not zoned and planned for heavy industry? And I envision there the answer would go from 1, promote oil and gas as a source of revenue for the city. That would be the 1 side, that you'd want to actually promote it as a source of revenue. And on the 5 side would be that you would not want to sell anything, rather conserve it for future generations. And the last question is, do you believe that a 120-day moratorium that our current schedule allows adequate and appropriate time for public input and the best regulatory platform Longmont can achieve for the city? Where 1 would be it's adequate and it's the maximum amount of time that should be allowed, and 5 would be that it does not provide enough time for appropriate design and deliberation.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess, see no one else that will go there, I'll stick my neck out, and I'll give you 4, 4, and 4 for your 3.
Thank you.
Councilmember Witt.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, number 1 is kind of a legal question, and we Whether or not I think it's disruptive or not, I don't know that this body has the authority to say it will not happen. So I'm going to leave that one alone for the time being. Leasing or selling Longmont's, the city of Longmont's mineral rights, I think that it is my belief that at this point, I don't see it to be necessary to do that. I think that if we were going to do that, I'd want to put it to a vote of the people. That's my opinion. Is a 120-day moratorium long enough? I kind of floated this idea last week that I'm not sure that we needed a moratorium. We started down that route. We did a lot of discussing moratorium, no moratorium, but that doesn't really talk about our real options, okay? Just having a moratorium does not solve our problem. So the length of time of a moratorium really, to me, has become superfluous. What I mentioned last week, which many people didn't hear because it wasn't put in the newspaper, was that I think that we need to look at this as we need to think of an energy master plan. We were talking about master plans. Take a holistic look at this, and it could take 2 years. Or we definitely cannot have a 2-year moratorium. So based on the rules and regulations that the state has put in place right now, I think it is possible to update our code and continue to work on something that gets the policy right. We need to get the policy right. And 120-day moratorium is not long enough to do an adequate job because it's going to be a long process, but we can't have a moratorium that lasts a very long time. So I think 120 days, we're going to do that, and we're going to continue to work with staff and see what we can do, because it is very narrow, the things that we may do. But I want us to have what's best for Longmont, and I don't think even a 6-month moratorium would sufficiently cover that.
Well, I guess I'm going to speak again because I'm the mayor, so. On the whether we extend the moratorium, I would be in favor of that if we get some pushback or some ideas come up during the public forum or something we didn't think of, or we just can't dot all the I's and cross the T's. I think you can do a heck of a lot better job in 6 months than you can 4 months. We're going to do the best job we possibly can, and you know, I'm like Brian Bagley will tell me, I'm 1 vote of 7 in a schizophrenic council, and but
You did not say that.
I know he talks like that.
No, he was talking about, that's his quote of his, not right. Yeah. But no, I'm hoping that we can really get this all done in 120 days. But if we can't, you know, my feelings are we can probably do a lot better job if we had 2 more months. But I don't know. That's my own personal. It's not the council's point of view. It's my personal point of view. Any other? Councilmember Witt.
And I'll just quick say that from my casual discussions with council members, we are all very concerned about what is best for Longmont and protecting our people, health, and doing what we can. But it is very limited what we are allowed to adjust based on the COGCC regulations. So, but we are all committed to doing the best job we can for Longmont.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thanks, Mayor Coombs. Stealing my quotes. We've talked, Mr. Bassman, so you probably might be able to anticipate and expect what I have to say, but I'll go out on a limb. I'll tell you what I'm thinking. Number 1, do you believe that drilling and fracking is disruptive? That was the first one, right?
That's correct.
And might be a cop-out, but it depends. Absolutely it's disruptive when we're talking about putting it right behind someone's home, a school, natural resource. Absolutely. But then again, we all use lights and drive cars and like our energy and like to stay warm. However, so if we're, I mean, I'm for exploring oil. And so, but if it happens in an area that it's not bugging anybody, it's not disruptive at all. So it's a 1 or a 5. And that's the problem that we're dealing with here. So you're asking me to answer a question, or us to answer a question, where it's probably, the problem is we're dealing with a set of rules at a state level. And I told this when we had dinner the other night with the legislature. We're dealing with some rules that are applied globally throughout the state, or statally throughout the state. But we're trying to apply the same rule, whether it be inside a city or whether it be in the middle of a county. And that's creating problems because now the oil and gas industry is kind of encroaching into an area where we care. And so it's either 1 or 5. I don't think it's 2, 3, or 4, but it's 1 or 5 depending on the site. 2, am I for 1 being promoting oil and gas versus 5 not wanting to sell and conserve? I'd say that's a 2.5, depending on where the area is, what the issues are, etc. So I don't believe in drill, baby, drill, damn the neighbors, but also I don't believe in, let's maintain a pristine world without energy and heat. So 2.5. As far as the 120 days, are they adequate? I hope it's a 1. I hope the city can get it done, but I fear it's a 5. If you actually look, I think we're already coming up on the first deadline. There was my dad was the first one. I'm sure we've all heard it about the train having to travel 60 miles an hour. And if the conductor only drives 30 miles an hour for half the distance, how fast does he have to go to make it within the hour deadline? Well, 90 miles an hour? 120 miles an hour? The answer is it's over.
Exactly.
And so, I mean, the reality is, if you look at the deadline, if you actually look at the city's ordinances and what we are required to do when we bring forth moratoriums and ordinances, we have to have public input, and our boards have to give input. We ourselves asked for the super committee, so I mean, there's only so much time. So I hope we can get it done. So it's a 1, but I fear we can't. So it's 5. And so 1 and 5, 2.5, and 1 and 5.
Very good. Thank you.
As good as you get.
Wow. Very well done. Councilmember Levison.
So I will give the global perspective because I read The Economist every week, and they have an article about America and fracking or Europe and fracking, and I'll give you the global perspective, and it sort of relates to what we are doing in Longmont. France has categorically banned fracking, and yet Poland is doing a lot of oil shale production right now, and in the case of the French, you can say a lot of things about the French. They love their nuclear power plants, but they love their environment and their stinky cheese and their language, and they love their communities and the way things look. That matters to them. And so in France, the difficulty is all this stuff has to happen where there's some castle or, some pope, walked through this bridge in Avignon or whatever, and somebody danced or whatever. There was some major historical event that happened. And you can't, it's sacred ground. You can't frack there. You can't drill. Plus the cost is phenomenal because the shale formation is a bit different. But in Poland, they take a bit of a different perspective. They've got the Russians holding them hostage for gas in the wintertime, and to them, it's the same story of independence from independence from an outside power that could leverage, economic and creature comfort disaster upon your populace. So we're sort of stuck in that same rock, between a rock and a hard place, or between, France and Poland. Is there the Maginot line somewhere there? But so what we're talking about is, on the one side, we're a little French. On the other side, we're a little bit Polish too. And I'm thinking that nowhere, I think the Poles are accepting it because maybe there's a lot of extra land in Poland that's not sacred ground. And they're stressed by something different. I don't think we have those stresses in Longmont. I think we're more French than we are Polish. If that gives you, on the scale of 1 to 5, France and Poland, and we won't, rewrite European history, and we won't talk about the euro either. I never thought that 120 days was enough time. I didn't vote for. Initially, I was really, 6 months, I think, was more relevant for our city. And then as far as, leasing and drilling where the city owns rights, well, we own, what's the most pristine land. And we've asked voters to pay sales tax money to buy that land to hold in a kind of a public trust. That we heard one speaker early on, Mickey Han, talking about, herself being in the industry before she became a doc and fracking tons of wells. But I heard her also say, I don't really think that you should use land for open space that we bought for that purpose, very less invasive use of recreational land to be having that intense industrial use. I mean, after all, I don't know exactly where all the French nuclear plants are, but they're not in the middle of Paris. They're not in Marseille, although they probably want to put them in Marseille these days. They're certainly not on the Promenade des Anglais in Nice. So that's where I am.
Councilmember Finley.
Well, I'm not going to talk about, the global perspective. I'll tell you how I feel, though, Joe. And I've always enjoyed the information you've brought to us, and I thank you for doing that and being involved in this process. Do I believe that drilling in urban areas is disruptive? Kind of with Brian on that one. If it's by a school or somebody's back door, yes, it is disruptive. But you have to, you can't make blanket statements, I don't think, about those things. You have to look at the area, each area, as we go along. Number 2, leasing and selling our oil and gas rights. We've not been asked to do that. We've not been asked to consider that. I'd have to look at that. I don't think we need to right now, but in the future, if we need to, my number would change on that. Number 3, 100-day moratorium, was that enough? I thought it should have been done before we had to even have a moratorium. I think it should be done with alacrity. I think we need to get our codes up to snuff immediately. I know 120 days is short for staff to do everything they need to do. I think we need to look at something right away, though, and I think we need to do it as quickly as we can. I don't know if it's adequate. I hope that it is.
Councilmember Samori.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I did take my medication today, so I'm not schizophrenic, and I'm stable. I'm going to start with question number 3 first, because I remember in reverse order. 120 days was based on what we heard from staff they can do, and I believe that it should be enough, and I hope that it is enough, and if it isn't, we can take a look at it. As far as question number 2, again, that's not on the table. We are not discussing that, and I don't know that there's any real immediate time frame for that. And as far as number 1 goes, it may be disruptive, but some of those leases for the minerals have probably been there for long before the urban area spread out to where they would be drilling. So although it may be disruptive, we may not have much choice as a city. whether we allow it to happen or not.
Thank you all for
Thank you.
responding. I appreciate that very much. If I could just mention in particular, Councilmember Witt, I really appreciate your concept of an energy master plan. I want to stand up and cheer when I hear you talk about it. I'm hoping that the city manager feels empowered, or that council has empowered the city manager to approach staff with the challenge of coming up with creative ideas such as that, and either incorporating them within the regulations or alluding to them within the regulations, or possibly in making sideline comments when they come forward after this body of research that they've done, in order to give the entire community some additional information about what we can do to push back on what we feel are unfair or on regulations that we feel are inappropriate for our city that are thrust upon us by the state and by the COGCC.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up, Shelley Bassel, followed by David Pilster.
Bonsoir. Buenas noches. I'm Shelley Bassman, and we live at 3414 Lakeview Circle. I'm a wee... Oh, yeah. Like this? I'm a wee sleep-deprived. We hosted our 2.5-year-old grandson last night and today, and but it was fun. And it was fun. Let's see, I've been thinking about setbacks. I'll start there. I've been thinking about setbacks, specifically from oil wells to the next closest thing. And came across the Oil and Gas Commission has a monthly oil and gas staff report. And in December, on December 1st, last year, they had a page called Well to Building Setback Review by the Commission. And it was by every single county. So in Weld County, these are the numbers. Of 2,672 gas wells in Weld County, 5 are less than 150 feet from the building, 121 are 150 to 350 feet away, 186 are 350 feet to 500 feet away, 560 are 500 feet to 1,000 feet away from the building, and 1,800 are 1,000 feet or more away from the building. And I got to thinking that here in the city, we're being forced to put the gas well, or the gas well tells us that it's going to be 350 feet from someone's home, or 350 feet from our... So urban and suburban citizens, I'm thinking, are forced by the Oil and Gas Commission regulations to live up to 3 times closer, 3 times or more closer to the gas well, which is a heavy toxic industrial activity than rural residents are. I come from I'm not, but my grandfather, father, and brother are all attorneys. So this thought occurred to me. Could it possibly be a 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law situation? I know the Colorado courts recently ordered the Department of Education to provide an equal education to rural students as to urban students. And I don't know. And then I've been thinking more about them, setbacks. And it occurs to me that the Oil and Gas Commission's setbacks, they're not even arbitrary. They're not even protective. They're what would make the oil companies the happiest, assuming they have to have some setback. And they're definitely not the strictest in the nation, as they often claim. In Texas, for example, allows municipalities, the rich ones anyway, to regulate gas and oil facilities themselves. And just last summer, Flower Mound, Texas, on the Barnett Shale near Dallas-Fort Worth, upgraded its municipal gas well setbacks from 1,000 feet to 1,500 feet. That's gas well to home, school, religious institutions, parks, lakes, streams, ditches, wetlands, and wildlife refuges. And the Oil and Gas Commission in Colorado frequently claims that a patchwork of different city and county regulations would be confusing to the gas drilling companies. But apparently that's just not a problem in Texas. According to a recent CU School of Public Health study in Garfield County, no scientific studies have been done about what would be a safe setback from gas well to a home. And there's a professor out at Mesa State in Grand Junction. I wrote his name down somewhere. But his statement was that the further a home is from the gas well, the safer the people in the home are. And it occurs to me that with modern directional, and I'm going to start calling it lateral, radial, lateral.
Horizontal.
The ones that from this place, they can go a half mile that way and get the oil. Under 8,000 feet down, 7,000 feet down. That with that technology and ability, we can have safer setbacks. Not only we can have them, I think it's incumbent upon us to demand them. And yet the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission has repeatedly refused to reconsider the setbacks that they have in their code. So with apologies to John Lennon, can I keep going? You guys, with apologies to John Lennon, and I've begun chanting to myself and any higher power that might be listening, y'all bear with me. All we are saying is give cities 1,500-foot setbacks like in Texas and Weld County. It takes about 12 extra notes, and you have to go a little faster. But I'm sure John wouldn't mind. I'm sure he would appreciate the sentiment. And he'd even have a wry smile at somebody who's 64 and 4 singing it. In my email today, there were, on January 3rd, a court case was decided. Gunnison, it was SG Interests Limited, a oil drilling company, versus Gunnison County.
Yeah, we all got that in an email today.
You've all got that?
Yep. It came to the city today. Thank you.
The COGCC cannot say. It has to be decided on a case-by-case basis whether something is preempted. And that together with the directional.
Thank
Go for
you.
it, you guys, or the staff.
David Pilster.
1,500.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, fellow council members. My name is David Pelster. I live at 1574 Goshawk Drive. Before I begin, I would like to say it was great seeing the council today at Intel at our ribbon cutting ceremony and celebrating our new location. We're now an official site in Longmont, which is pretty fantastic, I think, for Intel and Longmont. I am coming to talk about two things. The first thing I want to briefly talk about is the public invited to be heard. I would like to ask that you don't limit the public invited to be heard. I understand the reason why it was proposed, and I would like to state I will personally try to be as succinct as possible in the future, bring only facts, try to keep the emotions out of it going forward. I also want to state that being here on TV in front of the council and being able to state our opinions or facts is really, really important and sometimes the most effective way to communicate. And the fact that it's on public record is huge. And that fact that everyone gets to see it on TV or watch it retroactively on the internet is great. So I'd like to ask that you don't take that away or limit it, even limit it, keep it like it is. I'd really love that. So I want to get to fracking, and there's a couple things that I wanted to bring to your attention, and the first thing is and feel free to, this can be a rhetorical question or feel free to respond at any time. If we allow horizontal drilling to surround our city, first of all, is there any reason to believe that it won't? if we're already getting encroached on the east side, is there any reason to believe that it won't? Then are we going to be able to expand our city? Are we going to be blocked in? I think that's something the council really needs to look at. The second thing is that I want to talk about risk, and that we can't make rational decisions without quantifying risk. For example, federal law mandates low risk for many communal industries. Industry affected and used by a large population, examples aerospace, civil engineering, bridge design, etc. And horizontal drilling reliability pales in comparison to those other industries, mostly because of the fact that Mother Nature is not able to come up, because of Mother Nature, we're not able to come up with accurate models predict what we can't see underground. And fracturing happens to be a nonlinear chaos. And computer models aren't really that helpful. So we really don't, we really can't, it makes it really difficult to quantify the risk. And so the way that you quantify risk is you use history. But there's been some myths that I've seen in the papers recently about the fact that horizontal fracking has been happening for decades. And I found the history and I was going to share it. So early 1900s, natural gas extracted from shale wells, vertical wells, and they were fractured with foam. 1996, slick water fracturing fluids were introduced. Slick water is necessary for horizontal fracturing. So in 2002, multi-stage slick water fracturing of horizontal wells happened, just 2002. And then 2003 was the first hydrofrac in the Marcellus Shale. Then 2007 is the first use of multi-well pads and cluster drilling. So the point that I want to bring is that I don't think that the moratorium is superfluous. And the reason why I don't is that it not only gives us a chance to bring our regulations and our codes up to the level that we're capable of given the COGCC, but it also gives us an opportunity for some science and research to expose some of these risks and then let us react. For example, even the fracking fluid disclosure rule doesn't take effect until early April. So what happens if they come and say, we have this, don't we want to be able to react? And I think that the moratorium gives us a couple weeks to possibly react. And if that we find out that we can't, I would hope that our council would extend the moratorium to react and say, oh, you have that in the fracking fluid? How are we going to handle that? And what I mean by handling it, have we considered that for the flowback water, the fracking fluid that has a non-toxic the non-toxic chemicals lacing the fracking water, that only 11% is actually recovered during the fracking. The remainder is recovered through the life of the well for 15 years. Where is that going to go? Is that going to go to our wastewater treatment plants? We're going to deal with the benzene, toluene, ethylxylene, and xylene in Longmont. Where's that going to go? Looks like I'm out of time.
We'll give you an extra 30 seconds since we.
Okay. There is one thing that I heard recently watching the Republican debate that I thought was very interesting, and it has to do with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the definition of what happiness is today is a lot different than what our forefathers, their definition of happiness was. Our definition of happiness oftentimes has to do with pleasure, money, etc. And their definition of happiness was doing the right thing, doing the moral thing. And so I wanted to end with that.
Thank you, David.
You have any questions for me?
Don't see any.
Okay, thanks.
Great presentation. Gene Dissler.
Hi, I'm Jean Ditzler from 1541 Chucker Drive. Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Some of my questions have been answered because my friends and neighbors are very thorough. But I did want to bring up something Shelley said about the email that was sent to you regarding the Gunnison County ruling at the Colorado Supreme Court level. And I'm not a lawyer, so I don't quite understand the ruling, but I just wanted to urge you all to look at it very closely, because from what I understand of the ruling, that it says that the COGCC cannot preempt city rulings as a overall guideline. So that means if we put in a law, the COGCC cannot just say you can't do that. They can't preempt our ability to regulate within our city. That's what it seems like this Supreme Court ruling is saying. And if it is saying that, then Council Member Katie Witt's point of there's not much we can do within the constraints that we have wouldn't be a point anymore. We could do what we need to do to protect ourselves. So I think it's important to look at that and look further into it and how it affects what's going on right now. And also to reflect upon the fact that this just happened a week ago, and a lot of things are happening throughout our state so quickly, because just now this oil and gas drilling is coming and invading into the urban environments. And so this is a very new issue. When people say, oh, it's been around forever, this invasion into urban environments is very, very new. And so much is happening. There's stuff happening on the state level. They're trying to get legislation through and everything. So these moratoriums, you know, I would love to see a year-long moratorium. I don't think you can declare that. I think you can only do 6 months. I'm not sure. But I would love to see the moratorium extended as long as it can be to let the state catch up to us, to let the whole state find out what's going on with this so that we can react in a thoughtful manner. I'd hate to have to see you revisit the city code in a few months because new information came out. I mean, I could see this going on forever like that. So I would love to see that be a thoughtful process that's going on your end. And if you have any thoughts about that, that would be great.
Thank you. You made some good points. Jerry Vaughn.
Mayor, council members, good evening. Hi. I guess I'm going to change the subject a little. Would that be a good idea?
Sure.
Usually, if I'm going to say something, it's usually because I've had enough of whatever is happening, and I feel like I have a need to say something about it. So, and this is kind of unusual for me to speak up like this, but even though I was a teacher for over 30 years, it seems just a little different for me. I guess I want to go on the subject of noise. And if I may for a minute, I'm going to read this conclusion here. Noise now ranks as America's #1 neighborhood complaint, higher than crime according to the U.S. Census Bureau. Studies link noise to cardiovascular disease, gastrointestinal problems, and immune suppression. It's also a major source of sleep disruption, which leads to irritability, fatigue, and decreased job and school performance. Although there may be many other causes for the above maladies, an increase in noise may be the hidden intruder into our lives. I'm not familiar with the extent to which the council has considered the train noises or any other noises in town as to how far you've come and how much effort you put into it. But I have been affected by the train noises to the extent that each time I try to ignore it, it just seems to come back. I have my own records to show that, let's see, trying to go to bed about 10:30, there's a train right there. Blasting away for about, 5, 6, 7 intersections. I don't know how long it takes. And then one comes in about 2:30, another one 3:30, another one 4:30, another one about 6:30. And then during the day, I've counted as many as 6 or 7 trains blasting away, and I'm at 1921 Ashford Circle, right over here in Spring Creek. And if I'm working outside, it isn't always easy to talk to somebody else because of the trains there. And if I can't open the windows, you open the windows and it just blasts you out of the room. So you have to keep the windows shut and be careful about where you are so you can hear something. And given this conclusion here by a very well-known Arlene Bronsmith, is an environmental psychologist, I would hope that the council would refocus whatever to do something about the trains. I've looked at some of the regulations that the trains have, and as far as what's required to have a train blow its whistle. And from what I understand, there are various levels of which a crossing can be constructed so that a train doesn't blow the whistle. There are various safety guards and so forth that you can put in there. And I would think that even though I know there's an expense from doing this, but what if you just did one intersection in a year? Is that a big deal? It would be a big deal for me if it was the intersection that's right up the street from me. But I guess I would like to refocus the council to take a look at that, because it certainly is disturbing to me.
Councilmember Levison.
I actually, my bedroom window faces east. When there are no leaves on the trees in Collier Park, I get every one of those blasts along with you, and it's not pleasant. We've been talking about this train noise ever since they enacted the new rule that would penalize the engineers that they didn't blast, and they were going to enforce it. So we have talked about prioritizing intersections to try to start working on them where the most people affected, the cost is extremely high on them. And a community member, Paul Tiger, suggested at one point we just bite the bullet and bury the train tracks going through town.
Yeah.
Talk about expense, but he noted that other cities had done that, and Paul's not here tonight. If he was, he'd take you out in the hallway and give you the arm's length research that he's done around how much it costs and how many people have done it. It's going to continue to be a problem for Longmont, and again, I think that part of it is whether or not we can band together with enough other cities along the Front Range. The railroad runs through any town, because if you didn't have the railroad running through your town, you weren't a town in the West. And I think that we possibly still have an opportunity to maybe get the higher-ups in the federal government, since it's their rule, to maybe help us with creating a grant program where we could use some of our money and apply to use part of a pool of grant funds to start working on these intersections.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, we're trying, but it's everyone's resource short these days, and certainly a lot of people, when they're given a choice of adding to the deficit or having a better night's sleep, it depends on some people would rather you have a bad night's sleep and not increase the deficit, rather than you get a good night's sleep and we, will increase the deficit to pay for it. So it's a tough situation, because every intersection will cost us different amounts of money.
Of course, the other thing is that what I understand, 94% of all diseases and sicknesses is caused by stress, and this is certainly stressful.
I'm surprised I'm not dead already.
Yeah. Yeah. What are we doing to ourselves?
Well, thank you, Jerry. Next up, Dan Dissler.
May I say, like the comfy chair? My name is Dan Ditzler, 1541 Chucker Drive. Thank you again for allowing us to have the open forum this evening. I would say that this is one time a year is not enough. Do it 2-3 times, once a quarter. That'd be great. a lot of the questions that I had have already been asked, so another couple of them came up as you were all speaking. But a few of us met with Representative Matt Jones today at the Trail Ridge Middle School site of the fracking and the proposed site, and he had some questions regarding what was going on there and that sort of thing, and wanted to get some neighbors who are next to it point of view. And one of the things that came out of that conversation with him was that he was writing legislation as we speak for a 1,000-foot setback in any urban area from any structure and that sort of thing. And I was kind of wondering what your thoughts were that. And in addition to that, we believe that an additional, a 1,500 setback for consolidated wells is not out of the question, considering all the damage and noise and that sort of thing. And to kind of piggyback on the last speaker's thing about the noise issues, imagine that next to a school where the kids are trying to learn and you've got all that noise going around. That school is at a pretty high level now. I would imagine their scores and their CSATs and all that stuff is going to just start going down the hill as the noise and the distractions come about day in and day out of their learning process. And I don't know that I would like to sacrifice my children just to see if that's going to happen or not. So I just wanted to get an idea of City Council, if you would be in the support of a 1,000-foot setback at a state level, and if proposed by Mr. Jones and that sort of thing. So, thanks.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. We can give you our opinion, but until that gets to the legislature, and Matt met with all of us in a legislative session last week and heard our concerns. So I think he's using all of our concerns to develop his legislation, and we applaud him for that.
It's like Gayla Kelly.
Being in the hot seat's a little different. My name's Gail Kelly. It's
Okay,
Gail.
Gail.
And I'm good to see you guys all here today. My name's Gail. I live at 1670 County Road 28. I'm here to talk about the Union Reservoir Loop. And I'm not going to repeat what's already been said. We do have a concern about the wildlife out there. We would like to be kept informed. I think you got about 20 names, right? Mm-hmm. And I think all but 4 have email addresses on them. And we would also like to see some of you with the City Council come out and view how that loop is going to affect the wildlife right around it. There's one area on the north side. The path would the Union Reservoir goes right up to the road. I'm talking right up to the road. I don't know where you're going to get a path along there. We would like to be an asset and work with the City Council because the stuff that you have going on the south side is awesome. It's really interesting. I love seeing the sailboats out there. It's a lot of fun. So we want to be an asset and bring an agreeable solution. That's why we want to be involved. We only found out 3 weeks ago about the loop. I know, excuse me, you said you sent out postcards. I have the Union Reservoir Recreational Plan update here, and it looks like you sent out 1,350 postcards, and you got 51 responses. Is that a very good average? Is that a good average, or? I don't know.
Mayor, it depends on who's interested and who isn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, obviously, we didn't get
Yeah.
the message because there's 20 on that list that would have said,
Sometimes
Or-
in surveys, an answer of no response means that people don't care. I mean,
I want to tell you the first time, well, not the first time, because I knew there was going to be, the Union Reservoir was going to have an expansion. I took my grandsons to the rec center, and they had the flyers there about the expansion. There was nothing in there about the loop. It was all about the expansion, and I picked up 2 or 3, got them to my neighbors. Believe me, we want to be informed. We want to know what's happening out there because it is important to us. And how we did find out, I think there was some surveyors out there looking at the land, and they were asked, what are you doing out here? We're surveying for a loop. What? We didn't know a thing about it. Out of 20 people on that list, not one of us received a postcard, not one of us. That's something I would have noticed, all of us would have noticed, if it had to do with Union Reservoir. So if we invited some of you out to look at the reservoir, is that something you guys would be open to? We would
Absolutely.
love.
Yes, absolutely.
We
Will
would
there
love-
be coffee and cookies too?
Actually, we can do that. I want to tell you, this is how important this is to us. We even developed a name for ourselves. The neighbors, it's called the Union Reservoir for Wildlife Preservation Association. Thanks to Jen. He's the one that came up with that. And it is important to us. The wildlife out there is just beautiful. We saw a fox, a coyote, right along the shore there. They're so fun to watch. It's just a whole different environment. So this is something we want to be informed about. So I guess that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Gail.
Thank you.
Tammy,
Mayor, could I just, so that everyone that's listening, if I remember correctly, the master plan approval is on your agenda for next week. So anybody out there that's interested in being a part of that and having you hear further from them before you adopt it, they should be involved next week.
okay. Yeah, let's take a 5-minute break.
6 o'clock in the morning to go to high school or something to get on now. You need to go to school tomorrow morning, Ms. Witt?
Well, we don't have that many names left, so I think we can get through this. Go ahead, Kate.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. I'm Kate Johnson. I live at 11227 North 66th Street. I really appreciate you allowing to have this open dialogue with you tonight. Sometimes it's frustrating when I get up here and give my 3-minute spiel and I want to ask you a question, but it's not really in the formula. So I appreciate this format. And I'm here once again to speak about some of my concerns about the proposed fracking. And of course, there's many, many concerns that I could talk about, but I wanted to start with just mentioning something that Phil Doe from Be the Change presented to you in December when he and Wes Wilson were here. And his information focused on the water demands that are involved in drilling. And that's where I'd like to focus my conversation tonight. But before I begin, I just want to tell you a little bit about who I am. I'm not a politician. I'm not a policy expert. I'm not a scientist. Really not even an activist. I'm just a citizen of Greater Longmont. And I raise dairy goats. I raise chickens. I raise kids. And I'm just trying to do what I can to keep this community healthy and beautiful for all of us. I have no hidden agenda, and I'm really only motivated by my desire to do what's best for this community's health and well-being, as I know you all are too. So back to the water concerns. You've heard some of these statistics before and these numbers, but I think they bear repeating. According to Colorado Oil and Gas Association's own statistics from Phil Doe's presentation, each single horizontal fracking well would require 5 million gallons of water initially, and potentially another 35 million gallons in the years of refracking that would happen. And there was an article in November in the Denver Post that stated that oil and gas drillers have already bought at least 500 million gallons of water this year from cities for use in fracking along Colorado's Front Range. And Jim McGee, who's the water manager for the city of Loveland, said that drillers may need more water than we have. That's his quote. In 2010, the U.S. EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, estimated that 70 to 140 billion gallons of water are used to fracture 35,000 wells in the United States each year. That's approximately the annual water consumption of 40 to 80 cities with a population of 50,000. Now, I realize that's nationally. We're talking about a lot of water. And the waterdefense.org states that in the Delaware River Basin, the gas industry estimated it would take 10 billion gallons of water over the next 10 years, which they plan to withdraw from the same sources that the public depends on for drinking water. So my question for you all tonight, because I haven't heard it anywhere, and I'm just wondering if each one of you knows the answer to this question, is where is that water going to come from if we go forward with the number of proposed drilling sites in the city of Longmont? Do you know? I mean, I'm really asking this question. I don't know where that's coming from. Is it all going to be trucked in? Is it coming out of Union Reservoir? Is it coming out of local aquifers? I'd like to hear from each of you just to know if you know.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I actually asked that question from some of our local oil and gassers. They don't get it from Union because apparently that's not clean enough. They said they get them from cities out of fire hydrants. They buy them from a company called A&W, and they truck it in from far away from a variety of sources. That's what I was told. Now, whether that's true or false, when I asked, that's what I was told. And so where will all the water come from? I have no idea, but good questions.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard those sources too, but I guess I'm feeling like during this moratorium, that might be a really good thing for us to know. Where is Whereas what source of our local water is going to be depleted? I mean, if it comes out of a fire hydrant, well, that's water that's supposed to be used for something else, right? So do you know, Council Levinson, anything more about?
Councilmember Levison?
Well, I know that we had considered and approved a lease with A&W, and the lease document said that the water was primarily going to be used for agricultural purposes and to recharge wells. I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago there was a water case, I think, at the Supreme Court that had farmers not being able to pump out of their wells anymore. And so when we leased the water to A&W, it was supposed to be the primary support was for agricultural purposes, to be able to recharge wells so that farmers could pump water out of their wells where they wouldn't have had an opportunity for be able to pump the water from like the Platte River back into their wells. And that was my understanding. And I think that we may have asked that question. I don't know if I asked it publicly, but my assurance when I voted on that to approve the lease was that the water was going to be used primarily for agricultural purposes. And the city of Longmont, we're really built on our agricultural heritage. I mean, you know, the founding fathers and mothers of Longmont, you know, all had farms. And some of the reasons why we were smart about things is that people planned ahead. They knew that the water was precious, and so every time we annex land in, you have to give the water, or you have to give enough water for the use that the land's going to have. And if you don't have it, you have to provide it one way or another. And those kind of forward-thinking water policies really, I think, came out of the fact that, you know, these farmers knew how important water was to the community and the future of the community. So I think that those questions are certainly going to be asked when we come up with some additional water leases if they're presented to us, and we'll want to know those facts. So, but the lease I voted on to approve, the purpose that I was told this was going to be primarily for agricultural purposes.
Well, I guess my 2 cents on this, when I saw that presentation by Phil Doe, the thing that wasn't the mass volume of water, but the fact that that water that gets pulled out, the produced water, gets driven off somewhere and then dumped down an old well and sealed off. It's lost to the environment for forever, I guess. I don't know. But, you know, most of the time we have water, we irrigate lands, and it either evaporates into the ecosystem or it finds its way down to the aquifer. So I'm still a little bit concerned on what happens, you know, even if you're only using 0.25% of your water each year, but you do it year after year after year and you lose it forever and ever. What does that mean? I don't know.
Exactly. You know, when I spoke here at the November council meeting about that, I read a quote in the paper the next day about my concern about the water, and that there was a representative from the Oil and Gas Association that responded to that. And he said that under the, or she, I don't know who it was, said under the worst case analysis, drilling operations use only 0.14% of the water demanded by irrigation. And, you know, that was my thought exactly when I read it. I said, yeah, the difference being when we irrigate, it stays in our water cycle. So we get to irrigate with it again next year. And I have irrigation rights on my property. I don't get a lot of water, but the little bit I get, I really depend on. And, you know, I don't worry about that the farmers around me are also using a lot of water, because it's all going back into our water cycle, and we're going to use it again year after year after year. But when you start looking at these numbers, you know, with the fracking, and like you said, a very large percentage of it is dead water now where nobody's going to use it. It really concerns me a lot. And in fact, Reagan Loscombe, who's the director of Colorado Water Institute at Colorado State University, said that energy companies may look to Colorado's farm and ranch land. He said, if this thing really gets underway, he said, it's going to require a good bit of water. We've got a finite quantity. Most of that quantity is in agriculture. Are you going to grow alfalfa? or are you going to take a big paycheck from the energy companies? And I think we should all be concerned about that. You know, not just because I live on a farm, but we all are dependent on agriculture. As Councilmember Levison said, that's part of our heritage in this part of the country. And, you know, whether you think you depend on agriculture or not, if you eat, you do. And so I'm really concerned from not only a local perspective, but from a global perspective of what are we thinking? And I just want to make sure that you all are asking that question and getting better answers than we truck it in or we take it out of a fire hydrant, because if it's coming from somewhere and we're killing it, that's going to be a problem for all of us. And we should darn well know what their plan is and what those quantities are.
Thank you, Kate. Marilyn Hughes is up next.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. It's really nice not to have to stand behind a podium. I do enjoy the forum every year. Thanks for keeping it going. Many people have been speaking about fracking tonight, so I'm going to take everything I was thinking and shrink it. See how fast I can get across my points. I heard Wes Wilson talk about the Niobrara Formation, and I thought, the Niobrara Formation, and he was talking about how big it was. And so I did some Googling, and I found a map. I don't know if it would show up on the screen.
Just spell out the states there. How many
I made some copies of it in case anybody was interested. But I was pretty impressed with the fact that it basically covers northern Colorado and goes from Boulder County, edge of Boulder County, all the way west on the northeastern quadrant of the state. That lets me know that fracking and drilling are not going away. This is, I believe the governor said in his State of the State address that new discoveries in the Niobrara Formation are very exciting. So he thinks that this is a good thing, but he also thinks that he wants to work with counties and municipalities to make sure that we have appropriate regulations. So what I heard in that was that there sounds to me like there's some movement along this with Representative Jones's legislation and Senator Bacon's legislation in the state, and with the governor saying that he would like to work with counties and municipalities. I think that we've got some room for negotiation, and I'm hoping that the council will maybe do some lobbying. Maybe there is something that you can do as a council before legislation comes out. Because this is not going to go away. And I think we have a chance in Longmont to really be on the forefront of best practices. It'd be pretty exciting for Longmont to stand for best practices in the state. So if anybody's interested in this map, it's very simple. Just has a nice little line drawn around the Niobrara Shale, and it's from a site called Heart Energy, and they have a store.heartenergy.com, where they sell maps and information about drilling and oil. So if anybody'd like to have a map, I'll leave it with Don.
All
Anybody interested?
Sure, I'll take one.
Okay. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Marilyn. Daria Laverne, followed by Tom Seaman.
Good evening, Mayor Coombs, council members, and city staff. My name is Daria Laverne, and I live at 429 Emery Street. I would particularly like to address my comments to the people of Longmont. We are depending on all of you to make your voice heard because this issue is not soon going away. I would like to thank Mayor Coombs and Council for voting 7-0 on this moratorium. I'm sorry not to see Councilman Santos and have his input tonight. There's a reason why all over this country, here in Colorado, and especially in our home rule town of Longmont, that moratoriums are being put into place. There is danger afoot. Danger to our land, our water, our health, our well-being, and most of all, our safety. This gives me grave concern, and I know it must certainly concern you as well. I've been reading that the COGCC has been strongly asserting the preemption doctrine, as well as issuing threats of litigation if local governments do not abandon efforts at regulations and ordinances. We must hold on to our rights of self-determination in order to protect our health, well-being, and safety. And we must also determine how exactly to make the oil and gas industry responsible and accountable for any and all current and future harms that their industry, including but not limited to drilling and extraction, will cause. And this is not a when. And this is a when, not an if, harm to the people living in Longmont. We, including at least this council and city staff, owe that to our fellow citizens. Here's my first question. Currently, if 5 barrels or less of fracking fluids are accidentally discharged, no report is even necessary. Is this correct? Can the mayor or any member of council tell us, and this should be an easy one, what department and or who will know if a spill greater than 5 barrels occurs and when it happens? 2, what measures and procedures are in place now to alert the people living within a determined distance from this discharge? And 3, what exactly is the safe distance from a spill? Please feel free to be as specific as possible. Or staff. Or
yeah. Can anybody from staff address any of the questions that's here?
Mayor, we may need to bring this information back as we bring forward the proposed regulations. I'm not sure that anyone's prepared to, on the spur of the moment, answer those questions.
All right.
Just a guesstimate on if there are measures and procedures in place to handle a spill and what communities will know. I mean, we have a big air raid siren that goes off. Is anything like that set up if a spill occurs and our kids have to leave their school immediately? I mean, they're 350 feet from the schools, guys.
Yeah.
Mayor, I can answer that. We do not have a system since the reports have to be given to the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, not the City of Longmont.
You're kidding me. Seriously? Okay, that answers my question. Okay.
Excuse me, Ms. Laverne, I think that's why we're motivating staff to get all that information gathered together in time for the 120-day moratorium before that's over, because we don't have anything. I mean, I don't know if you can treat it the same as if you would have if you had an industrial use that was a toxic chemicals. If they had something, it might happen inside a building envelope and not outside. So we may not have those protocols in place, but certainly, if you're asking a question, if one of us or any member of the public drove by a site, would we know what to do or who to call? I mean, I think that's the kind of thing that we're going to get to the bottom of. Certainly, we asked that question of our state legislators last week. If you see a truck that's marked fracking fluid and it's leaking out the back, who do you call? And how far do you follow it before, if it goes from Boulder County to Weld County to wherever,
So we're depending on the oil company to let us know what's going on. Is that correct?
You know what? I don't even know the answer to that, except that we did mention when we spoke last week to them, to the state legislative representatives we met with a Thursday night last week, that one of the critical things is that we should know when there's that contamination happening, as opposed to the entity that knew was Engel Homes, and obviously top operating, and then we had a member of the public dig it all up and give it to us.
Exactly.
So I'm thinking that that's one of those things that I asked them, that they should write into the regulation that cities have to be informed if it's happening within
I guess
city
that's what I'm
limits.
saying,
Right.
is that I'd
So-
like to see something
Yeah.
brought up in that future.
We do have regulations on the books already if there's, for construction sites and
Right.
industrial uses, there is, but I don't know whether or not we have a
The
devised
school
emergency
principal wouldn't
plan.
know. if
You know
it
what,
happened.
if we don't know, I don't think they're calling the school principal either.
Okay, that's my point. Now, the next thing I have here is over near the airport, someone I know got, this is just a copy. This is an Ancana educational brochure, a flyer. And in it, I've drawn my own little rudimentary thing here. So this is basically what they say. Their distortion of facts say that 0.49% of toxic chemicals, that's all that is in 99.51 water and sand. Doesn't that sound nice? It sounds so good. Let me show you this. The allowable benzene amounts are 5 parts per million. This equals 0.0005 allowable benzene. Now, I want to apologize to all the math whizzes on the staff and council. You probably know this already. That's not a good percentage. 0.005%, 5 parts per million, equals 5 parts per million. 0.49% equals 4,900 parts per million of toxic chemicals. So when you're getting this information, it's a deception. It sounds so good. And the average person would look at it and go, oh, 0.49, that's so harmless. But in fact, if you do the math, it's pretty bad. So I just want to finish, 30 seconds, I guess.
Okay, been given a rest, 30 seconds.
The idea is that all that is seen or perceived is not to be believed. And it's a rhetorical question. Does anyone on council or staff see how easily statistics can be misrepresented? And my last page is, when anyone has a vested interest like the oil and gas industry has, it shouldn't surprise anyone that every statistic must be examined and questioned. Every statistic, even the ones that Kate talked about, for water statistics. And surely staff and council will insist, in spite of COGCC and state law, that our children deserve at least an equal, if not greater, protection than what the oil and gas industry tells us is in fact not a fact.
Thank you, Dory. Next up, Tom Seaman.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. You guys are becoming like family. Schizophrenic family? No. Couple small things here. As we've been listening tonight, I thought these things, I don't think we received a notice about the walking path yet either at our house. And one question I had, we've been curious about, because we have animals on the land we lease back there with the city, when the path goes through the fences, are there going to be gates that people open and close when they walk through the path, or are there going to be like a stile people walk over? Do you know how they're doing that?
I would think it'd be like they do down in Boulder County with fences with chains that you go through and close.
Okay.
Hopefully people will open and close those.
Yeah, we're just curious about that. Another thing that's interesting, we're looking over our new lease. Kevin Bowden sent it to us, and on one level, it was telling us as a lessee that we should not be doing anything on the land back there that's loud and causes vibrations, it said, to disturb the adjacent properties. and then within the lease also they're saying, but you must allow us to do seismic testing back there. So I thought that was interesting. Anyhow, I have a question for you guys. As somebody's mentioned already that things are changing at the state level, and we know this new law is coming up. I thought it was February originally, but now I'm hearing in April when they have to disclose the chemicals. Do you guys know what drove that law?
I think it was Diane Beguette and some of just activists.
Yeah, well, what I learned, an incident actually, probably in the last month I read this, but I looked at it again here, and this was actually an article in Newsweek. There was a lady named Kathy Bear. She's been a nurse at the Durango Mercy Regional Medical Center for about 20 years. And on April 17th of 2008, she was doing her nursing in the ER room, and they brought in a man who was drenched in fracking fluids. And it was an emergency case, and they shut down the ER, evacuated it, and everybody donned suits. But she was, the first 10 minutes she was nursing him, she didn't do that. And what the article says is a few days later, Bear's skin turned yellow. She began vomiting and retaining fluid. Her husband rushed her to Mercy, where Bear was admitted to the ICU with a swollen liver, erratic blood counts, and lungs filled with fluid. She said she couldn't breathe. She was drowning from the inside out, and the diagnosis was chemical poisoning. And then at the end here it says the chemical that allegedly was on Marshall when she arrived at the Mercy Regional Medical Center was Zetaflow, a chemical made by Weatherford. In a copy of its material safety data sheet, which details ingredients, health warnings, fire hazards, and more, Zetaflow contains methanol and 2 undisclosed proprietary compounds. The document also warned that Zetaflow can be an immediate and chronic health hazard. Prolonged exposure can cause kidney and liver damage, irritate lung tissue, decrease blood pressure, and result in dizziness and vomiting. All symptoms Bear experienced according to her medical records. Her physician wrote that her symptoms were entirely consistent with the exposure to Zetaflow. So I just thought it would be good for you guys to know that's what drove this whole thing. It was 3 years ago this incident happened. So as we consider this, I know you guys are concerned, and I just appreciate your concern because it's a lot more is coming out, and there are things changing at the state level, and so appreciate you guys being on guard for this. Thanks.
Thank you. Diane Seaman.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs and City Council members. I'm Diane Seaman at 12566 County Road. This is my first time at the podium. This has been a number of months of an intense education for us. Not being in the city limits, we don't vote for you, so of course we haven't probably paid as much attention as we could, but we appreciate the format here and how much we've learned and how much you have learned in a short order as well. So much has been well articulated tonight. I don't want to be repetitive, but I do want to emphasize something that's become sort of looks contradictory to us. Certainly the biggest drilling site is right directly behind our house. Most of you all have been there, and we so appreciate your time investment to come out and see this area. But of course, we're also impacted by the master plan for Union Reservoir, which we think could be a tremendous enhancement. But these two things look so contradictory. On the one hand, you want to, we've got this, what sounds like a pressure that no one can do anything about, to put these consolidated wells back there with the development of this master plan that looks like a tremendous enhancement to this wonderful natural resources. So it just looks bizarre. On the one hand, 3 consolidated well pads, and then we're talking about this nice loop around the reservoir going through the well pads. it's just have to, and I know it's obvious, but I just have to make the statement. It's just which decision gets put into place first? The well issue or the master plan? Or does one wait on the other? I don't know. The other thing I really want to just encourage you all, and we are so encouraged by this moratorium, but to encourage you to dig deep as American citizens and not to just stand back and say there's nothing we can do with the Colorado oil and gas regulations. This is the foundation of our American heritage, to stand up for what really is right. And it is worth the fight because it isn't going to go away. This is a precedent-setting time in Colorado history. It's going to affect many other states as well. Many other counties are going to be watching. And I would encourage you during this 120 days to be in close touch with other municipalities that are fighting this issue so that there can be a unification in this process to find out what's going on legislatively. And then I would also ask you to personally put yourself in the house right next to one of those pads. Really put this on personally. I think you have done a great job by coming out, but I really ask you to put it on. There's been so much tonight stated about increasing these, how far away the setbacks. And I just really ask you to really consider that. Look out your backyard. Go measure 350 feet. Go measure 150 feet. Look at what 1,000 feet looks like. So you really put it on, because we've had to put it on. And I think what's been so impressive in this process is how many citizens have come and spoken out that don't even live near Union Reservoir, and their concerns are great. And I would hope, what I've learned from this process, that if this was being proposed at McIntosh, I would be at just as many meetings as concerned as my neighbors are who are over at McIntosh about Union, because it affects the entire city. So I just encourage you just to keep the fight. Let us know how we can help you more. You have limited time. We all have limited time. And if there's more we can do to help information, let us know too, and the same for the staff. But I just hope that the intent here is to fight. If there's any way to ban it, I guess my question would be to you, would that be your first priority? And if you want to comment on that, that's fine. If not, I understand. But just fight. And thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Next up is Ray Hart, followed by Chris Portzuchek.
Hi, Mayor, City Council members. Thanks for having me. My name is Ray Hart. I live at 951 17th Avenue. I have a simple request that you inform law enforcement that I think more speeding tickets could be issued on what I consider the three main streets in Longmont. That's Main Street, 17th, and Hover. I don't think I can drive not only those streets, but any street in town without, witnessing a speeding violation. And along with that is the noise. There used to be a sign, the noise ordinance is enforced, but the noise doesn't come from defective vehicles. It comes from guys with brand new motorcycles and brand new cars and trucks that have loud mufflers on them. And it's been an age-old problem. I mean, we've had dragging main, we've had cruising main, and that's been kind of stopped, but still people go fast on Main Street. From 9th to 2nd is 25 miles an hour. I challenge you or anybody in this town to go 25 miles an hour down Main and not have probably almost everyone go by you, and not very many people just go the same speed as you. And so, yeah, I have a simple request, not like these other folks, but that's that's my request, and thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Chris Porzuchek.
Mayor and City Council. My name is Chris Porzuchek. That's 12624 Weld County Road 1. And I'm going to make a correction on that name so you won't forget it. It's poor, as in what will happen if all these wells go behind my house. Zoo is what I will have behind the house if the wells go back there. And I'm still waiting on that check so I can move. Poor zoo check. Thank you. I'm here to talk about fracking as well. And thank you for the forum. I do believe the water is more important than the natural gas that we're trying to extract for energy. I realize that energy is important, but I think in the future the water will be more important than our energy, and our focus needs to be more on renewables than it does on the natural gas extraction as we allow this unrestricted drilling. For those of you that follow, it's driven down the price to where it's uneconomical for most companies because it's a free-for-all to get in before these regulations take place. So hopefully whatever contract you guys have with A&W, I don't know that, I have not reviewed that, but hopefully it won't be putting our water supply in jeopardy in the long term over the next 20 years. I want to make a good point about these consolidated pads because I keep hearing from the drilling companies how these consolidated pads are ultimately supposed to have less impact by consolidating them to one location. So therefore, there's less affect by putting them in one location. But let me correct that statement and say that when they do that, they're actually accessing minerals that are under houses or under lakes. So in effect, there will actually be more wells than if they didn't have the technology and they didn't consolidate those pads. So what I'm saying is there would be 1 or 2, maybe 5 total wells right behind my house if they didn't have consolidated well pads, as opposed to 16 since they're going to be accessing minerals from underneath people's houses. So this concept of consolidated pads is a misnomer because it's really not going to protect somebody like me that's next to a consolidated pad, 16 wells. The technology is there, but the actual concept is pretty invasive, and I don't think they're accounting for that when they built these houses, around the east side of town. There wasn't the technology to drill horizontally. So, and now that there will be more pads. And that's a fact. My biggest problem with this is the air quality that's going to come out, and mainly I say that is for my child, because they're not required to trap all of the VOCs that are going to come out during the process, where they're extracting all the liquids, all the flowback that's coming back out of that well. They're not required to catch those VOCs. So when they do disconnect from one thing to another, there's going to be a gigantic plume of methane coming out of the back of my house. And what they're not required to do is catch that or even monitor it so they know how much is coming out. So what I'm going to ask you as City Council is to push for one of those as one of the regulations that push this whole preemptive ruling, because it will not be an obstruction of their rights to make them monitor and or capture these VOCs that are coming out. I think it's a cost of doing business. That's how I see it. This is an externality, I believe, is the word that's used in economics, and I don't think they're accounting for it. So I would like to see you work with our city staff and as well as any legislative body at our state level to push for monitoring at these well sites when they are extracting the water out of these wells, that the VOCs be captured. Lastly, I think we've shown that the COGCC is not holding up their end of the responsibilities. I keep pounding this in. Why? Because ultimately that's where the change is going to have to be taking place here. So my question to you would be, you know, we have the contamination, the COCs not holding their end. Is anyone taking the time it sounds like you have met with the state reps and anybody else at their level. If you could tell me what you're telling them as far as what kind of regulation you want, what kind of accountability do you guys want as a city when the COGCC is not doing their end? What are you demanding? What are you telling our legislators that you want to be able to do besides just knock on somebody's door and say, hey, this is not getting fixed? What's actually being placed? What demands did you put on our legislators when they are drawing this legislation? I would greatly appreciate a response on that. And I don't just mean regulation. I mean of oversight and accountability. But thank you again for the forum. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. We met with our legislators, with our Senators Schaefer and Matt Jones last week, and we told them the same things that you're telling us. There's no accountability. There needs to be accountability. COGCC has great rules, but they don't have the means to enforce them. Councilmember Bagley used the analogy of stop signs. You can put stop signs everywhere you want to, but unless somebody enforces the stop sign, no one stops. So we have expressed those same things to our legislators, and I think they listened, and I think we'll see some good legislation to be proposed. But this is an election year, which means that, you know, I personally don't have great hopes for what will come this year, but if we continue to push for those things, it will happen.
Councilmember Levison.
I think there was no newspaper coverage, so that's why you didn't see an article. But we did meet, and staff took notes, and I think they took notes of every single thing we asked to be included, which was a really long laundry list. And I think certainly I think that we can get that list to you. But some of the things we talked about is you know, whether or not we would have who's going to pay for the roads and the infrastructure that, you know, when they wear down County Road 1, who's going to pay for that? And look at what we can do as far as regulating the construction aspect of things and, you know, surface contamination. Certainly, as we mentioned already this evening, having any violations be reported to the municipality so that we can actually send our inspectors out there in case there's a spill, that it's surface contamination. We can keep on top of those items. But certainly there was a really long laundry list, and I don't know if we all can remember off the top of our head what we said for, I guess we were talking about oil and gas for a full hour maybe of the conversation. So there are notes that staff has, and I imagine that that's all going to come into you know, what we're going to try to, what we can do in our regulations, but certainly they got an earful from us, and they're going to get all those notes, I think, too.
Thank you. Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Mr. Porzuchek. Did I get that right?
You did.
Sweet. I'm gonna actually address your question as well as some other questions, and it's to say because it links directly to yours. And unfortunately, the answer right now, to, like, I've heard questions, how do we find out if there's been a spill? We don't. How are folks notified? They're not. What is a safe distance? Depends. Because if it happens behind your house or whether it happens, you know, 350 feet or 1,000 feet away, it's bad enough it's going to impact you. Where do we get our water from? My point was wherever they want right now. And so what I expressed with President Safer and Representative Jones is that giving us home rule to determine what we want to do in our city, yeah, it sounds good, but it doesn't help. Because what happens is, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, we have a jurisdictional problem here in Longmont. We have Boulder, we have Weld, meaning unincorporated Boulder, unincorporated Weld, we have Firestone. And so we could say we are not going to waste our water, we can ban fracking, even if it were permitted, and the problem will still persist because we do not have jurisdictional authority. If the fracking that occurred on 119 in Fairview has a disaster, my understanding is we have no jurisdiction to ask about it. And that worries me. And so my request to the state legislature was, don't pass a law that just says home rule cities can do whatever they want. You need to, cinch up and basically say, these are going to be the rules, and use common sense. Don't put them near schools. Don't put them near homes. Don't put them near natural resources. And I think they got it, but at the same time, I heard the comment that it was a firestorm when this came up in 2008. And so I kind of get the impression, brutal fact of reality, we're on our own. That's what I heard. And so I do not dismiss anyone's comments on fracking. But while I'm sitting here listening, it kind of reminds me when you're in court and you go to a judge and you say, I want a divorce. And the judge says, yeah, you're in the wrong court, man. This is municipal. We handle traffic tickets. You need to go to Boulder County, district court. That's where they handle this. No, I want my divorce. You need to go to district court. And so jurisdictionally speaking, I think this is a mess. And I don't think a solution's coming. I look at the moratorium. I hear the people talking about the moratorium. My understanding is moratoriums are illegal, but cities are trying to make them short enough that the oil companies are just going to go, too expensive and too problematic to sue. So I don't know how this is all going to turn out, but I do know that the state legislature is worried about it. I know that cities are worried about it, and I know there's a lot of chatter going on. And I wish I had a better answer for people, but we'll just do the best we can. That's what I propose as a community, not just council, but everybody. I joke that I think Chris and the Bassmans, use this same zeal, do it here, but then go down and do it there too, because that's the right jurisdiction. I'm not saying there's nothing we can do about it. I'm just saying that I'm worried that we can't find the answers without pushing the state, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Chris. Strider Benston, followed by Christina Hildebrand and Sean McCoy. Sure. Yeah.
Rules are suspended.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's one of them used to work things. Wasn't intended to cause that much trouble.
Should we,
Maybe why don't you go to the next person?
yeah, while they're working on the microphone, would that be okay with you, Strider, if we move Christina Hildebrand?
Strider. Good evening, Mayor Coombs and City Council members. My name is Christina Hildebrand. I live at 1400 First Avenue in Longmont. You recently annexed our property. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. Not about fracking directly. Mayor and City Council members, a couple Sundays ago, I woke up with a burning passion. I must have had a great dream. My passion is to see Longmont realize its potential as a green city. What do I mean by a green city? Green, to me, means a place that supports the earth, its home, and the people who live there. Its citizens, businesses, and city government are all interconnected by a common desire to decrease waste and pollution and increase the health of its citizens and the economic vitality of the business community. In fact, those words are the mission statement I wrote for something. At this point, all I know is that I want to do something tangible to help my community. I don't know how, and I don't know what form it will take. Longmont already has several organizations that think along these same lines, and I consider Longmont a forward-thinking community. But here and there, I see wasted natural and material resources. I see unrealized jobs and a lack of connection between the need and the solution. For instance, when Longmont has a large item drop-off event, city staff used to go through what people were dropping off, with their old couches and various pieces of furniture, etc., and they would redirect those items that could still be used to thrift stores or other organizations. That service, as I understand, no longer exists. This creates a problem. Usable goods are being thrown away where they won't be of use anymore, and they will pollute the environment and take up landfill space. It also creates a potential solution. People could find employment providing that service and reselling the items, thus keeping them out of the landfills, providing inflow of money into Longmont's economy, and giving Longmont citizens affordable choices for their next couch. I see Longmont rewarding green business practices with recognition that those businesses can proudly display in their windows and on their websites. I see the city and school system adopting an integrated pest management program to replace its present use of toxic chemicals. I see a center where people with ideas and concerns can be linked with people who can help them realize their dreams, find jobs, and find solutions to their problems. I see Longmont leading the way in better food distribution, food being donated by grocery stores and restaurants and being properly distributed to the hungry, our animal populations, and eventually being composted with no waste. So I hope you will wish me luck as I consider changing my present search for a part-time job into a job that will feed my soul and my community. And if you have any really great suggestions, please give them to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Councilmember Witt.
I just want to say, we forgot to say welcome to the city. When we annexed you in, we're glad to have you in the city, and you do have great ideas, and I think you're on the money, allowing green initiatives to thrive in our community. That's going to come from individuals, not from government. So I think you're on to something.
Thank you.
Councilmember Levison.
And thanks for the water you gave us when you annexed.
Well, we want some of it back. I brought some little milk containers. We get it through the tap right now, which is a wonderful blessing. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Christina. Strider Benston.
Thank you. By the way, Christina and I each applied for the Board of Environmental Affairs this current term, and we got 0 votes between the two of us, so we're going to try harder. It's kind of sad, the paucity or the sparsity of the audience tonight, and I think the city has not lost interest, but 2 or 3 years ago, it was a big thing to have started the public forum, and you have to re-educate the public each time, because I think we would have had a full house had they realized how wonderful an interchange this can be. And I appreciate I agree with at least 90% of everything that was said tonight, including from Chris Rodriguez, which is rare between me and Chris, and also my next door neighbor Ray, who I didn't know was going to be here tonight. There are so many major things going on in the world, which of course we must address, but we also need to create the forms in how to address these issues, and that's what a home rule city is part of the building block towards how do we make a livable world. I would like to let you know that the world's leading water advocate and expert, Maud Barlow, is going to be speaking in Denver this coming week at a 3-day seminar. I think it's called Downstream Neighbors. On the 27th through the 29th, and I know her personally. I met her about 10 years ago. But there are actually trillions of gallons of water at stake in this game that we're dealing with now. And the corruption of government and corporate impunity in buying politicians and getting all of these slides is directly responsible for our perilous challenge today. To paraphrase William Jennings Bryan, you shall not crucify mankind upon a cross of oil or gold, because that's what's going on right now. I thought I was invited to speak at the Martin Luther King program last night at Silver Creek, and so I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and my brief remarks, I think you're going to have to endure it, because there wasn't room for me on the agenda last night. The last time I saw Dr. Martin Luther King, 47 years ago, my name was Arkansas. He asked me to meet him at the airport in Washington, D.C., and he clasped my hand in both of his. He gave me $25 and a plane ticket to Atlanta. And he said, "Give 'em hell, Arkansas." Martin looked deeply into my eyes and said, "Give 'em hell, Arkansas." He sent me back to Alabama with my little candle lighted from his mighty flame. And I'll still carry that candle. 1965 was a tough year, but we won that battle. We won the right to vote. And now that's being taken away from us in numerous states around this country, and it's all connected to the big money domination of our government. Now, Martin, after winning that battle in Selma, could have gone back to Atlanta. He could have become a politician. He could have taken bribes from lobbyists and giant corporations and gotten rich. But Dr. King carried his flame back into the wilderness. And he worked for peace and for social and economic justice for all people, for everyone, for you. Gandhi said, Mohandas Gandhi, the great soul, said, "I am only one man. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And even if the very best that I can do be woefully inadequate, still I must do what I can." Today, our society, our democracy, and our beautiful planet are in peril. Those of you who are students, and us elders too, study, figure it out. Learn what's going on. Every person at every moment in our lives is a living choice. You can do right, you can do wrong, or you can do nothing. As Spike Lee once said, do the right thing. I'd like to give you a little song that I wrote a while ago. May your hands always be busy. May your feet be running fast. May the sounds inside your mind paint pretty colors on your past. May the dawning of tomorrow bring you hope for years to come. and may the days that bring you presents linger long. As I went out a-walking down that long and lonesome road, I met a man who gave me such a hot and heavy load. Said, now carry this within you till the rising of the sun. Ain't nobody else I'm asking, you're the one. Well, I asked him, why'd you pick me? I got cares enough now. I'm just a little kid, and there ain't no one's taught me how. And I just want to catch a baseball and to watch my children grow. Why'd you throw me on your stage to do your show? Well, he said, I've been asking for 1,000 years or more. But the folks say they's too busy just minding all the stores. Some like shooting guns and some like bossing folks around. And some folks like just putting on the town. Now there's some a whole lot smarter, and there's some as brave as heck. There's some so highfalutin there's a pain inside my neck. So I put out a call for all to live a life that's true. You're the only one that come, you'll have to do. So I'm giving you a mission, but the words are all your own. Once you figure what they be, then you can sing them in your song. Now they're gonna call you crazy and they'll lock you in their jail. But someday I'll come along to go your bail. So may your hands always be busy. May your feet run wild and free. And if there's no one else around, you know you still can count on me. So now just do the best that you can do and try to do it right. Yeah, just do the best you can with all you might. Now some say study nature, some say society, some say mind your manners, and some do chemistry. Some say numbers equals truth, and some say money equals love. You're gonna have to find your answer up above. Yeah, it'll take you half a century till they first begin to hear. They'll slander everything you do and color it with fear. But you just keep right on walking and singing on your song. If you're singing from your heart, you can't go wrong. So may your hands always be busy. May your wings keep soaring high. May the dreams that bring you courage light the rainbows in your sky. May the faith which gives you meaning keep your heart forever strong. May the days that bring you presents linger long. Yes, may these days that bring you presents linger
Encore. Encore. Thank you, Strider. And Sean McCoy, is he still here or did he go? Yeah, okay. I guess that ends. Seeing no one else, I will close the public forum and move to mayor and council comments. I guess I'd like to start tonight by saying that I was at an event with Gabe, council member or Mayor Pro Tem Santos today, and he had a horrible splitting migraine headache, and I know he would love to have been here tonight, but so anyway, if people are wondering why he wasn't here, he was pretty ill with bad headache. So anyway, anybody else have any comments? Councilmember Samori.
I'm just glad Strider was the last one because nobody could top his performance. So thank you for serenading us. Other than that, no other comment, Mayor.
Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. I just want to thank everybody who came and spoke to us today. I also have decided that during council comments, I'd like to kind of plug a local business. And today, while I was in town, I went to Simply Bulk and bought these lovely organic candies that are so tasty. It's a lovely business. If you haven't been there, they're on the 400 block of Main Street, Simply Bulk. They sell all kinds of really neat things, and you should go give them a try.
Councilmember Levison.
Thank you, Mayor. thank everybody for coming out tonight. Open forum was one of the first things I stuck my neck out about when I was elected in '07, and I'm glad people have continued to embrace it. It's really one of my favorite nights throughout the year. We do so many wonderful things, but this is really a unique opportunity. I also want to thank everybody who either participated in or helped organize the Martin Luther King celebrations, from council having our resolution and proclamation last week to the events this weekend. In particular, the Longmont Multicultural Action Committee members and task force that turned something that we didn't focus a lot of attention on. It really has become, I guess the theme was all cultures, one voice, and that really is very symbolic about what this city does as an approach to diversity and welcoming everyone. I also want to ask council members to take note that I ran in. Can I borrow your copy?
Absolutely.
Do you have that trends report? I happened to bump into Morgan Rogers from the Boulder Community Foundation, and the Boulder County Trends report is out from the Community Foundation. In the past, they've mailed this to us, and she admitted they didn't mail it to us. So I just brought everybody a copy. There's a lot of really good information that's really broad-based. It'll tell you a lot about Boulder County and also tell you about Longmont, and I encourage you, with all the other reading we have to do, to keep this, because there's a lot of information a lot of people refer to in this document, and there's they spend a considerable amount of money gathering it together. And I would like to ask that we invite Morgan to come and give us a brief overview with some specific information for Longmont that's from the report at some time in the future. I think we can do that at a study session. We've done it that way before, maybe 15 minutes. And if we had an opportunity to ask her a couple of questions, that would be excellent. And I hope that Councilmember Santos, I hope you're not watching right now. Hope you're sleeping if you have a terrible headache, and we missed you this evening.
Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor Coombs. Just like to remind my fellow colleagues and council members, I will not be here next meeting. Please forgive me and excuse me. Enjoy your shorter meeting. Two quick things. One, my wife's picture was on the front of the paper yesterday. Yes, I'm married to that. And then, yes, she won't admit it. Yes, that's a good point, Councilmember Samori. And then I just wanted to share with both the audience and my fellow council members what happened on Sunday, because it was really cool. We were invited by Bobby King. I had forgotten about the Martin Luther King Parade, and he had reminded. He said, "Come along, are you coming?" I said, "Okay, sure, we're coming." So we took the family, and we're going to walk with the marchers. And like an idiot, I thought, "Hey, let's bring the kids and the dog." And so I grabbed the dog, and we're walking the parade, and I tied it up outside before we go in to listen to the presentation. And every kid in that park would pass by and tease the dog. So eventually I was like, I don't want them barking or whining during the presentation, so I had to go out and sit with the dog. I could listen to the songs, and so I was the only one not participating, but at the end I started hearing singing and laughter, and I wanted to see. So I kind of just went and stood by the open door, and I was really touched by something that happened. And I'm sitting there with the dog, looking in, and at the very end they decided to have this prayer. And they started singing, "We Shall Overcome." And I'm sitting there, and I'm like 5 feet away. And what was kind of cool is I'm sitting there with the dog in like the outer doorway, and Michael, I didn't know Michael, this big, burly black man. His eyes are closed, his head's down, and they're all singing, arm in arm. And he takes 2 or 3 big, giant steps back, grabs me by the arm, pulls me and the dog inside, grabs my hand, and literally gives, the best way to describe it is a hand hug. And I was bawling like a baby. And so, Michael, I don't know you, but I just remember thinking to myself, is what I wish that I always felt. And so just wanted to share that.
Thank you for sharing that with us all. Councilmember Samori.
I guess I didn't tell the truth when I said I didn't have any other comments, but speaking of the Martin Luther King celebration, I wanted to acknowledge the students from Silver Creek High School in the Leadership Academy, because they helped put on the event at Silver Creek, and I think they did a tremendous job. Also, everybody tonight appreciated the open forum. I'd like to remind everybody that there's other opportunities to meet and speak to council, and that's at Coffee with Council. And on January 28th, Councilmember Bagley and myself will be coffeeing with all of you if you decide to show up. I don't remember the exact location right now, but maybe...
Ziggy's on Francis.
Ziggy's on Francis. I knew that.
Well, I'd like to give a shout out to Bobby King, our HR manager, for emceeing the event at Silver Creek High School and inviting me to speak at that event. And it was a wonderful, incredible evening. And I also, last week, was invited to speak to a bunch of fifth graders at the grade school neighborhood, Longmont Estates, and there was 3 fifth-grade classes. And anyway, I talked to them for about a half hour about what it's like being mayor, and then they asked me a bunch of questions, and they asked me, well, how did you get to our school? And I told them, well, I just walked. And they said, one kid said, wow, you should be driven in a Cadillac Escalade and have a couple of bodyguards. So anyway, I sure like getting asked to speak to kids. I think it's the funnest thing that I do as mayor, and I will always be involved in our schools and do whatever I can. So anyway, that ends council and mayor remarks. And city manager, any comments?
Mayor and council, I've been asked to remind you that the Longmont Sister Cities Association annual membership meeting is in this room on January 19th at 7 p.m. And also, you asked us to get RTD here to speak with you. Phil Washington, the general manager, and Lee Kemp, our rep. And they are available on Wednesday, February 8th. So you have canceled your February 7th study session. Unless you tell us that that's not going to work, we would like to go ahead and make a joint meeting with the TAB and turn that into a Wednesday meeting where Mr. Kemp and Mr. Washington can be here to fill you in on fast tracks and answer your questions.
Okay. What time on Wednesday?
Well, we would probably do it around 7 o'clock, but if you needed flexibility, we could do it as early as 6 probably and still make it work.
I guess it's fine with me, or just a minute.
I would prefer 7 o'clock simply because Councilmember Finley and I have the Cable Trust Board meeting that day. Okay. And that's only a quarterly meeting, so if we both missed that meeting, we've missed a quarter of the meetings for the year.
Okay, but 7 o'clock still works?
That's what we're planning for then, Mayor.
All right.
That's all I have.
City Attorney, do you have any comments?
No comments, Mayor.
All right. We are adjourned.